Hi, my name is Melinda Gonzalez, and this is my presentation on transgender and family relations. So in my first 3 slides, I will be discussing the struggles that the family faces in a day-to-day life and how they felt going through the transition of their loved one coming out to them. And in this first database that I found, a family of 6 expresses, how they felt when their youngest, son came out to them as wanting to be a girl. We'll say things like, "You're special, God made you special, because there aren't very many little girls out there that have a penis," said Renee. "Renee and I are in 100% agreement as to how we should raise Jazz," said Scott. "We don't encourage, we support, and we just keep listening to what she tells us." And later on in this article, they still, discuss what the reality of it was, and how they were going to get questioned as parents. How could you let your youngest go through this, and they're still so young, they don't know what they're thinking, they haven't experienced life. They knew that that was going to be a challenge that they were going to have to go through, but regardless, they were still going to support their brand new daughter. And with that, there comes religion. There are a lot of families that, believe in a certain leader. And sometimes it is, difficult for certain religions to accept the fact that, their loved one wants to be different. And in this online Christian newsletter, I had found the parents of a transgender son, talk about the struggles that they faced, and they say that there was a shock at the news, a lack of understanding of gender issues, internal conflict about what the church teaches about human sexuality, confusion and guilt about what we should do as parents, profound sadness at what felt like the loss of the person who had been our son, and fear and worry for what the future would hold for her. There were arguments, tears, sleepless nights, and prayers, lots of prayers. And in this case, they lean towards, prayer, either some pray that they help their loved one get through, this tough time because they know what the world is like, they're scared for them, or even some even try to pray on ways to change their loved one. And, it can be a good thing or a very negative thing. And going into more about, parents being worried about, their child's being discriminated, the risk in today's society. And in this article, it was kind of beautiful, actually. They were able to go to the Los Angeles Pride Parade and be able to go on a float, and there was this beautiful moment that they shared about, holding their daughter's hand, and showing their support for her, and holding up the transgender flag. And towards, once they took a step back and saw what it first started out as, they were so appreciative of it. And, they expressed to say that once our daughter came out, the language in our home became predominantly negative. "Are you sure? Your life is going to be so much harder, and you'll be discriminated against. You are so smart with so much potential, but some people won't see that. You'll have a more difficult time getting a job. You'll have to work harder to prove your worth. You could be the victim of a hate crime." And this is just acknowledging that, they were going through all these emotions. They were worried for their, child, for, they were worried that they were going to get treated differently, and they knew what the stakes were, and they, expressed that. And coming into the book of Luna, there's a lot of relations with, with today's society, real world versus, the novel world. And this book kind of comes into the perspective of Reagan, which is Luna's sister, and Luna is a transgender, boy wanting to become a woman, and Reagan it shows the challenges that she kind of faces throughout the book, and what it was like for her finding out that her brother Liam is now wanting to be a girl. So Reagan says, had I really thought that if I could see the girl in Liam, why couldn't mom and dad, why couldn't everyone? And this is at the beginning when she kind of realizes that there are going to be people who aren't as accepting as her. She realizes that it's going to be hard for Liam, and she knows that, but she's willing to be there to support him no matter what. And in the next stages of the book, we start to see that it starts to take effect on Liam, but with that also it takes an effect on Reagan, because she sees that her sibling is hurt, that it's a struggle for her. And in this part in the book, I fall to my knees and clench his shoulders, start to shake him. You have to throw up, Liam. I won't let you die. This comes out as a screech, which makes him raise his head and look at me. His eyes are already dead. And here, in this moment, Liam is holding up, there's, pills on the floor and in his helmet. And Reagan realizes that he didn't take it. He said that he couldn't do it. And, Reagan there was that moment where she just didn't want to lose him, and there's that worry, and it's, causing an effect on her mental health. And later on, it starts to cause, an effect on her social and her job life, in this, there was a moment in the book when Liam was covering for her job while she was on a date, and she kind of gets mad at Liam for exposing himself to, the couple that she babysits for by saying, "Thanks a lot." I screamed at him, "You just lost me my job." And to continue with that, there's another moment when Liam shows up at school dressed up as Luna and exposing who he really is. And she says, "How could Luna show up at school? People knew we were related. Chris knew. Liam and I would never be dissociated now. Me and Luna, they'd always see me as Reagan, the one with the transgender brother. I'd never be able to separate from him, never have my own identity. Even worse, people would think I was like him, her, different. I didn't want to be different. I wanted to be the same. I wanted to be accepted, loved like who I was." And here she kind of just expresses that, she didn't want to be in his shadow. She didn't want to get treated the way he got treated. And, and people don't realize that it does affect, the people around them, they also get questioned. And sort of going into today's society, there is still so much discrimination. There's even discrimination amongst families. In this online reference, I had found that family members engage in forms of discrimination that are deleterious to well-being. Discrimination can take the form of intentional misgendering, using incorrect pronouns or names, or even saying that a trans person is sick, sinful, or otherwise deviant simply by the fact of being trans. Discrimination can take the form of indifference from family members, with family members indicating that they do not care either way about a family member being trans. And, in today's world, it's, there's still discrimination regardless. There's still people who are worried about other people, and I think it is the dumbest thing ever, because in no way seeing a person that you don't even know, seeing that they're different, what in way is that affecting your life? It doesn't, And so, getting more into it, there are, people who will, start, Christian groups trying to, gather a safe place for people to be who they are. And I had found this website about the NALT Christians Project will afford people an opportunity to proclaim their unconditional love and support for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender friends and family members, said Wayne Benson, one of the co-founders of the site. And I think this is kind of something, great, where people can come together and, talk about the challenges that happens and, ways that they can, show their love and support towards their loved ones. And I think that is something so great that people do. And, lastly, it's society back then, it was, illegal for, same sex, gay marriage, all this stuff. But once the Civil Rights Act of 1964 it was there was able to be, kind of not lean towards discrimination. They opened the areas of the world, to different people of color, religion, race, sex, all that. And I got to the opportunity to actually interview one of my coworkers whose sibling actually turned out to be transgender. And I had the opportunity to hear his side of the story. And so when my brother first came out to me about wanting to become a transgender woman, I was in a bit of a shock at first and did not know how to react, but no matter what, I was still going to accept her for who she wanted to be. She knows her body, and all I can do is be there to protect her in every step of the way. And he kind of, being the older brother, he felt like, he had the duty, to protect her, and going through it. And, even to this day, he says that he still will get looked at if they're out in public, and he wishes that wasn't the case. And it does suck that, it still happens today. And coming to my personal agreement, I think that no matter who anyone is, no matter if they're my friend, if they're someone I don't know, if they're a loved one, I think that people are beautiful and unique in their own ways, and no matter what, they should be accepted for who they want to be. It shouldn't matter, what they look like. And I wish that people didn't look up to a certain norm. And, I wish people didn't treat them so differently. And I love this quote by Harry Styles. Love him. But it is treat people with kindness. And I just think it's, so true. We all have our struggles. We all go through things that we don't share to everyone. And so imagine something so big and important to you, something so that makes you feel so vulnerable that, you're forced to share, and that people judge you for how you live your life. Imagine people constantly being at your throat, judging you for the way you look, for the way you act, for the people who you like. It's just, it's self-degrading how people do that. And I wish it wasn't. But I definitely enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed this research project. It was very interesting looking at, the perspective of not the individual, but of, the people that it affects around them. It was definitely something that was well needed to learn about. And here I have my works cited page. And that is it. That will conclude my presentation on transgender and family relations.